Margaret Hill had always been known as a quiet, resilient woman. After losing her husband to a sudden illness, she found herself alone on the outskirts of Pinecrest, a small town nestled between snow-capped hills and dense pine forests. Life had never been easy for Margaret, but she faced each day with a quiet determination that few noticed and even fewer appreciated. One icy morning in December, Margaret walked through the town square, her thin coat wrapped tightly around her frail frame. She paused to watch the children play, their laughter cutting through the cold air. She smiled faintly, but her mind was elsewhere. She had an idea, a bold, unusual idea, one that would soon make the entire town chuckle at her. Margaret wanted to build what she called a double cabin. Not just a simple home, but a structure with two cabins joined by a shared hearth at the center. 2 cabins, she explained to the curious neighbors, one for me, and one for anyone who needs shelter from the cold. The townspeople laughed. "Margaret, you're dreaming too big," old Mr. Collins chuckled as he shook his head. "Who's going to want to stay in a cabin with someone else? Especially a widow?" But Margaret ignored their laughter. She had seen too much suffering, too many shivering families, and she refused to let winter claim another life if she could prevent it. She began gathering wood, salvaging materials, and drawing blueprints on scraps of paper. Her neighbors whispered. They watched her work tirelessly, even in the harshest winds. "Why bother?" they asked. "No one will come." Margaret didn't answer. She simply smiled at the falling snow, thinking about the warmth of a fire, the smell of pine, and the comfort of knowing someone had a safe place to sleep. Weeks turned into months. The double cabin slowly took shape. It wasn't perfect. The walls were uneven, the roof slightly crooked, but it was hers. And more importantly, it was inviting. The central hearth, a massive stone fireplace, radiated warmth into both cabins. The first test came unexpectedly. A young mother named Clara, her baby bundled tightly, knocked on Margaret's door on a particularly frigid night. She had lost power in her home and feared frostbite. Margaret welcomed her without hesitation, guiding her into one side of the cabin and stoking the fire. Clara's tears of gratitude warmed Margaret's heart more than any flame could. Word spread. Soon, other villagers, the elderly, the homeless, the weary, began arriving at Margaret's cabin. They brought blankets, food, and stories, and in return, Margaret gave them warmth, companionship, and hope. Still, some townsfolk remained skeptical. "She's going to run herself into the ground," one muttered. And for what? A few extra people in her home? But Margaret knew the truth. She understood that warmth wasn't just about surviving the cold, it was about restoring faith, fostering community, and reminding people that kindness still existed in the world. One particularly harsh night, a blizzard swept through Pinecrest. Snow piled high against doors and windows, and the wind howled like a wild animal. Margaret's cabin glowed with the firelight, a beacon in the frozen darkness. Inside, the cabin was full. A mix of strangers and friends who had once been alone, now huddled together. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Margaret hesitated. No one ventured out in weather like this. She opened it to find a man, shivering, his eyes wide with fear. His name was Thomas, a logger who had gotten lost in the storm. Without a second thought, Margaret guided him inside, offering him a warm blanket and a cup of tea. As the night wore on, Margaret watched the room. Faces lit by firelight, laughter breaking through the fear of the storm, strangers sharing stories and food, the cabin was more than a shelter, it was a sanctuary. And in that moment, Margaret realized something profound. Her dream of a double cabin wasn't just about walls and wood, it was about the human heart and its capacity for connection. By morning, the storm had passed. The snow-covered landscape sparkled in the pale winter sun. The townspeople emerged from their homes, shocked to see Margaret's cabin still standing, still warm, still full. They had expected it to fail, to crumble under the weight of ice and snow. Instead, It had thrived, and so had the spirits of those who found refuge within it. Slowly, the laughter that once mocked Margaret's double cabin idea turned into admiration. People began helping her expand it, adding another hearth, more bunks, and even a small kitchen. The once lonely widow had created a community hub, a place where warmth and kindness were freely shared. Margaret never sought recognition. She never asked for praise. She only wanted to ensure that no one in Pinecrest would have to endure the cold alone. And in doing so, she had shown the town, and the world, that compassion could build more than houses, it could build hope. Years later, children who had once huddled in blankets now played in the cabin's yard. Families gathered there every winter, sharing meals, laughter, and stories. Travelers came from miles away, drawn by tales of the widow who dared to dream differently. And Margaret, sitting by her hearth, watching the flames dance, knew that every mocking laugh had been worth it. Because warmth, she had learned, is not just about firewood or walls. It is about the courage to care, the strength to act, and the heart to embrace others, even when the world doubts you. And when love and kindness guide your hands, even the coldest nights can always stay warm.